Hello, good morning, everybody. You are watching on the Smart Money Culture on your TVs there in Texas and Louisiana. We welcome you, as well as joining around the world on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and the rest. Always a pleasure here. We do this Impact Money show every morning. Very special show that we have for you this morning. There's a lot going on, of course. As usual, markets are mixed. I said tepid. You could say mixed as well. We'll go through that in a bit. I do have a special guest with us today as well, David Winkler. David Winkler is he's the nominee, the Republican nominee for U.S. House of Representatives, coming out of the Philadelphia area there in Pennsylvania. So of course we'll have our good friend as well, Matt Dixon, join the show, as we always do, right? And cover everything. So Assange is home. Assange is home. This is big news. Assange is home. And that is just a wonderful thing. He just landed about 30 minutes ago. And it has been a heck of a ride for him. 14 years, Julian Assange has either been in jail. He's been in jail for about 5 years of that. And then as well, he's basically hiding in different embassies, and I think the Ecuadorian embassy mainly, for now. There was almost 10 years of that. So I think about 14 years total. The guy has been hunkered down, trying to stay alive. Really, it's no secret that Mike Pompeo was trying to assassinate. That is a known fact. As well, quite a few other things he had to deal with. I mean, this guy, Julian Assange, really one of the heroes of our time. It's interesting to see that he's home free now. I don't know how long he's going to be alive. I don't know what deals he made in order to get there. The hack on the Federal Reserve, the claimed hack, and the timing of his release was pretty interesting. I don't know if we'll ever know if that's connected or not, but it sure is interesting. But either way, I'm glad that he's getting to see the light of day. He's got a press conference in a little bit. We'll bring that to you live on my X account at Networks Manager. But before I get any further in, I got David Winkler here, Republican from Pennsylvania. And here he is. You know, he's got a day too. He's headed up north, right?
Yeah, I'm headed up to you. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, it is an absolute pleasure. And a shout out to our friends as well for putting these together. The Patriots United. They're doing a great job of bringing forth America First candidates that we need to support, and who are doing great things. So, David, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you into the race for the U.S. House Reps.
All right, so just a little bit about myself. I'm a combat veteran of 2 branches of service, both the United States Marine Corps and the United States Army. I'm also former law enforcement. So, right now I'm working in real estate, which is a total different, feeling and vibe. But what brought me into politics is, I think that America desperately needs some leadership. I think that we're lacking it. We're lacking common sense, and we're lacking some, pragmatic approaches to just policy. Just focusing in on the American people is something that, Congress is just failing to do across the board. And I think that I'm the one that can lead the change.
Well, that's awesome. It's a great message. It is funny, I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I used to think a lot of things. I think a lot of people did, right? The American public and probably the world is we're getting a bit jaded about everything, because it doesn't seem like no matter who we send in there, it is just even like you look at Gates, you know what I mean? And I mean, great guy, right? But he charging, and really trying to make a change. And then you do things, and it ends up maybe backfiring on you or whatever. And it just feels like the swamp. The sludge is so thick that you can't even hardly get through it. It's crazy.
I mean, you're right about that. I mean, and so, you know, you need more heavy hitters or more people that can hold that line and help out the America First type candidates up there. Especially when it comes to fiscal policies, stopping the weaponization of our government, closing our border, things like that. Like, you need people that will actually fight.
Well, that's right. I guess that's a very good point that you bring up. The more America First people that we have in there, then we can start to build different coalitions. You look at what the Tea Party did, you know, back in the day. They were really able to change some things. It is an interesting year. So I understand you were out at the Philly Trump rally. I wanted to go so bad, but you know, I have two kids as well. I know you have two kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old, and you know, it was just I couldn't do it. But I understand you got a shout out from the big guy.
So I'm endorsed by Congressman Dan Muser, and Dan Muser gave the shout out to the crowd and said, "Hey, I need him in Congress so we can start working together." Because we both share Berks County. So we're looking at, you know, with that overlap, what we, you know, providing manufacturing jobs, opening up energy sector, you know, as well in Berks County. And we're looking at working together. So, of course, Dan is excited to have another guy that understands jobs creation, understands, you know, how to put Pennsylvania on the map in the sense of energy. I know we're number 2, but we want to beat Texas. That's Dan and I's, our goal is to beat Texas.
Woo! So. Texas, there's so much energy coming out of Texas. I'll tell you what. I've had certain contracts in Texas for over a decade, and it's big money coming out of Texas. Yeah. Well, Pennsylvania is such a historic state as well. It's a wonderful state too. You know, there's I know you're in the suburbs mostly. I know we had David O on. Actually, it wasn't even this show. It was a while ago. But Philly is just the Democrats are so entrenched there. But there's so much else of Pennsylvania. I mean, beautiful hills and mountains, and we go skiing there, and it is just a beautiful place. Are you from Pennsylvania?
No, so I'm originally from Southern California. The military moved me out to the East Coast, got married to a girl from Philly, and, you know, the rest is history. But I would say that, you know, dynamics are shifting here. I wouldn't say that Democrats have a complete lock on Philadelphia. That's why they're freaking out. And you see Biden or Jill Biden down here. They even sent Jasmine Crockett to our area the other day because they realized, you know, we're moving and the black vote is actually waking up. So we're having pretty positive impact. Even when Trump was at that rally, we had I would say slightly over 10,000 people there in North Philadelphia in pure Democrat territory. And there was really no counter protest. I mean, I saw the protesters. So I would tell you, I think that we're about to see a change in Philadelphia.
Well, God bless you, man. And I'll tell you, on that point, that's what I tell people. You know, the black voters aren't stupid. You know, this is not a stupid group of people, and they're smart and they see what's going on. It doesn't take much. It doesn't. You know what I mean? You look around, things are in your face at this point. The inflation is just through the roof.
Yes.
You know, as I mentioned, like, it just doesn't seem like these guys in Washington have any finger on the pulse of the American people. You know,
no, I mean, they hide behind all their polls and everything else. It's a bunch of people who sit behind a desk and don't get out amongst the community to talk to them. I think the biggest fear in this race for my opponent is I'm out in the street every day. I'm a normal, everyday person, and I go to places that Republicans typically, you know, historically don't go to. I can go from the low income neighborhoods to, you know, high crime neighborhoods to you name it, to where I'm out there. I'm not afraid of talking to the people. Now, that's what I find funny is that she's a liberal elite that will sit in DC and look at her polls.
Your opponent.
Yeah, my opponent. And it's just a typical, you know, PA Democrat in general. They sit behind their polls and they act like they care about the people. But this is where I'm telling Republicans that you guys need to get out in the urban environment, get out in the community, engage. And I think that PA's recipe for success this cycle is due to a lot of playing to early vote, mail-in ballots, getting to the 3s and 4s in the sense of low propensity voters, and just it's a huge ground game that we got going on, and it's beautiful. I've been watching all sorts of different groups come into my district, from Trump's team to RNC to Americans for Prosperity, Dave McCormick. Like, we got everybody doing the work here. So you may see a huge flip come November, and I'm calling 3 different districts are going to flip.
Wow. Well, it should happen. I mean, it should happen. And we spoke briefly on the phone yesterday. You talked about even kind of a cycle, 3 year or 3 terms and then 3 terms. So his opponent that he's going up against, she's been in this seat for 3. This would be the 3rd, or she has.
Yeah, the 3rd. She's already in the 3rd cycle. Yeah.
So the 3rd cycle. She's kind of ultra liberal. I think a lot of the Democrats there, what they're trying to do almost is just stay back and hope that they don't mess anything up. And then, of course, we're, I guess, the underdog at the moment, and we're out there meeting the people and everything else. Yeah. So hopefully we have a safe vote. I'm calling it a safe vote. Hopefully we have a safe vote, and things come through. How can people help you? What is the best way that people can get involved?
So you guys can go to my website. You guys can go to www.winklerforpa4.com. Sign up to volunteer, donate, and just get involved in general. I think that we don't have another election cycle that's more important to me or to us. I think that I just feel like we need to keep the energy up as Republicans. Like, we got to take back the U.S. Senate, which, that's my buddy Dave McCormick over here in PA, and then me. We got to take back the PA House in the sense of we need to take back a few different seats. I got Neil Young in the 6th, I got Alfie Goodwin in the 5th, and me in the 4th. We got to get all 3 of those seats in. So sign up, and we'll put you guys to work.
Perfect. And Pennsylvania is so important. It is one of those. It's one of those states that can go either way fairly easily, and it's so important into the key of putting it all together, putting together the map. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Some last thoughts. I know you're all dressed up and you're heading on the road. Some last thoughts. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, I just want to tell the Republicans, don't lose faith in this cycle. Get out and vote. Whether it's mail-in voting, whether it's in person, whatever it is, just get out and vote. I think that we're going to take it this November. I think we're going to see a gigantic red wave. So that's what I'm hoping for. But thank you for having me, Bruce.
You got it. Yeah, let's have you on again sometime. David Winkler, American Patriot. Really appreciate it. One last time, the website for everybody.
www.winklerforpa4.com.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care.
Talk soon. Cheers. All right. Well, there you have it, guys. David Winkler, and hats off to our Patriot United friends for putting that together. The candidates that we've had on here up to this point have come through this Patriot United group. They're doing a great job of finding the American First candidates, finding the people that you more than likely want to vote for. And I know we're on TV and we're on social media. It doesn't mean that we think the same. That's what I tell people all the time. We don't have to agree. Okay. We don't have to agree. We can still be friends. And that's one of the great things really about our movement as well as the monetary revolution is we agree on 3 things at least. Right. And I bring this up all the time. We agree on freedom. We agree on ownership, and we agree on privacy. And those are the 3 things that we agree about. And we don't have to agree on everything else, but those are the 3 things we agree about, and those are the things that align us. But David Winkler, he gets our endorsement. He gets my endorsement here on the show. Happy to have him on, and thanks to the Patriots United group for making that happen. Let's talk more about the markets here. We have the great Matt Dixon. Matt, how are you, sir?
Hey, morning, Bruce. Morning, everybody. Good to see you again. Just a question, because we're not up to speed with the US election. We know it's very, very important, but is it, are Biden and Trump, are there going to be any other runners in this race, or is it Biden against Trump? I mean, I did hear something that there's, it's not just Biden and Trump, that there may be somebody else come into the fray. Is that right?
So we have RFK Jr., who is pretty interesting. I mean, RFK Jr., he's like, well, first of all, he's JFK's, he's John F. Kennedy's nephew, I think. And so that he's a pretty interesting one. He says a lot of the right things, but he's, once you get down to it, he's like, take all the guns and this and that. He's like, he sounds really good, and then you're like, oh wow, all right, well, I guess I can't really. I mean, if he was even just in the middle a little bit, I think he would pull some of the vote. But he is, I think now switched to independent. He was trying to run Democrat, and obviously Biden's the nominee. But it's a dirty business. They're not even letting him on the stage. So we're having this debate tomorrow, and theoretically, RFK should be on the stage with Trump and Biden. But they're like, whatever rule they use to keep him off, they keep him off. So he's running as an independent, and then there's another one running, I think, with the same party that Brock Pierce ran. I don't know if it's the Green Party or something like that, but really, they're so far behind. We haven't had a third party candidate that really pulled anything since Ross Perot. Ross Perot, what was it, 20, 30 years ago? 20, probably, I don't know. I'm getting old now. Maybe it have been 30 years ago. Ross Perot ran. That's actually why Clinton was elected. Ross Perot came in as an independent and took 20% of the vote. We hadn't seen anything like it in years, decades before that, and we haven't seen anything like it since. He came in and took 20% of the vote, and George B. Bush, it was an upset, really. Only got 4 years, and he didn't get a second term. And then we got Clinton, and then of course the rest is history.
I hate to ask this or raise it, but if something were to happen to Biden, because we all reckon, if something were to happen. Would it just be a runaway for Trump, or would there be an alternative?
So it's pretty interesting because I used to say, oh no, and I think a lot of it you say, oh well, that's not legal or this, that, and the other. But over the past few years or decade, we've realized that really legal is just the latest ruling that they've made, right? I mean, the legal, illegal. It's kind of like So I think that there's a big movement to replace him, and some of it's on the front and some of it's on the back. I think that the crown jewel, or the whatever you want to call it, would be to slip Obama in there. If they slipped Obama in there, they would have Trump would have that would be something else. Trump would,
and that could potentially happen.
It could potentially happen, and then as well, they really, really wanted to put Hillary Clinton in there. That was always their plan. Let's put Hillary Clinton in. Let's get her in, have the first woman president, the first this, the first that. So that could be another play. And then, of course, you have Gavin Newsom out in California. I think that Hillary Clinton, she comes with a lot of baggage. I think a lot of people don't like her. So if they put Hillary Clinton in, I don't think they would win. If they put Gavin Newsom in, Gavin Newsom is a big, tall, good-looking guy. He talks well. I think he's Nancy Pelosi's nephew. I mean, he has some serious connections. That could be a play, but if Obama was up for the job, I think that would be and if you had Obama, I mean, these two titans, right? Both, good looking, charismatic, people love them. I mean, that would be the play. And that would be a really interesting race.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So on to financial markets. I think I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Any news on the geopolitical front? I didn't hear the start of the show. Anything happened there?
So nothing that jumped out, right? I mean, it's all a mess. Of course, they're warming up. They're warming up Lebanon, and I guess they're going in. A lot of kind of dancing. I'll pull this down for 1 second. Put it back up in a second. A lot of kind of dancing back and forth. But I think obviously they're going to go into Lebanon over there in Israel. I think, they put the new NATO chief in. Russia says they're still in charge, but Russia hasn't retaliated. And as you mentioned, actually yesterday, I think, or we both mentioned maybe, it's hard to see kind of Russia retaliating. They do normally play the big or older person in the room. Strangely, I guess it seems to say it at this point in my life. But so, no.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, on the financial stuff, I was just looking. We talked a little bit recently about the potential risks in the market, and we're just obviously talking geopolitical risks. But moving back over to the macroeconomic risks here, I was just looking at something about securities, unrealized losses and gains in the market. And when we had the great financial crisis back in 2008, you can see there the available securities for sale, and then the blue is held to maturity securities. So it's quite interesting. You can see they're in negative there. So there's a lot of losses being held throughout that financial crisis, which was obviously a big weight. And they basically had the money printing to get out of that situation. And again, 2000 and around 2020, 2019, 2020, again, money printing to get out of that situation. But right now we're in a record-breaking situation on a negative side, with these unrealized losses from both securities available for sale and also securities held to maturity. So if you think about it in terms of a lot of the banks actually wanted to hold reserves in these treasuries, so US government bonds, because they were a safe bet. They're kind of guaranteed money. But the problem is, when you buy longer term bonds, let's just say you buy a US 10-year treasury, then when interest rates go up, the value of those bonds go down. So you're holding massive losses. And this has been the problem. So when you get a bank run, the bank cannot realize these assets, which were supposed to be rock solid, safe assets. And the banks can't realize these assets. So if you do get a bank run, the banks just can't realize anything. And then bailouts are required and probably more money printing, et cetera, et cetera. So we are in an extremely precarious situation right now regarding the unrealized losses on investment securities. So this is a big concern. Slightly longer term, it may not impact right now immediately, but I'm just saying there's something festering underneath, behind the scenes, that we should be perhaps a little bit concerned about. And then moving back over towards crypto. Sorry, were you going to say something, Bruce?
Yeah, I don't know. So it just because I kind of clicked back and forth here, and this is the bond market.
Yeah. So I look. I mean, the thing is, these markets are they're so intrinsically linked now that something happens in one market, it has a spillover effect into the other. So you see this correlation between different markets. So you can look at you look at a chart between the S&P and Bitcoin. They're actually very similar. They're very highly correlated, and it's the same now across a lot of the markets. And Bitcoin tends to be the leader of the crypto in general. Obviously, you get some outliers when they have, meme coins are one of those, for example. But in general, you look at the main capitalization of the crypto market, it's mainly Bitcoin. And you look at Bitcoin, and you could just as well be looking at the S&P pretty well. Obviously, in the very short time frames, there are differences. So just recently, the S&P continued to push higher, whilst Bitcoin had a bit of a pullback. But it's still a relatively modest pullback. But it's interesting to look at fear and greed. We touched on it yesterday, and we did say that last month we're in an extreme greed situation of 74 was the measure we can see here. And I was saying that the market was screaming, flashing warning signs that we're overbought, all the buyers are already in, it can only sell off. And that's exactly what happened. And there are lots of other indicators we looked at. We looked at divergences, we looked at various things saying that the market was due for a pullback. And I can remember saying those very words, market being overdue a pullback. And we've had that pullback. And we actually came into a much more extreme fear situation. When we get to extreme fear, then this indicator, I mentioned it as a contrarian indicator yesterday. And I just mentioned up here on my X feed that these are only contrarian when they're at extremes. So when you have extreme fear, then they're contrarian, meaning that the market is likely to bounce back because everybody's already sold. There's extreme fear in the market. And as Warren Buffett said, buy when there's blood on the streets. So when everyone's fearful, that is the time to buy. And that kind of is what happened this weekend. We had that quadruple witching last Friday. And following that, people, the market was in extreme fear. And following that, the market has bounced back reasonably well. We had, I think, 58,000 or something on Bitcoin. I think we're 61,000 today. So in percentage terms, it's risen quite well. Now, the fact, when I say it's only when it's at extremes that it's contrarian. So when we had an extreme greed situation, that was it's extreme. So contrarian, saying the market can only really go one way from there, and it went down sharply. and then we're at extreme fear, and the market can only go one way, and it went up. Now, what's happened now is we're still in a fear situation, but the reading is much higher, actually relatively near neutral. So we're still in a fear situation, a reading of 46, and a neutral reading would be 50 there. So we're still, but the point is, we have actually moved up substantially, and that's just reflecting the positive sentiment now creeping into the market. And this is very, very typical of a wave one in Elliott wave, which is the first wave higher in Elliott wave. And Elliott wave is actually all about crowd behavior. It's behavioral analysis basically put down on a chart. So when you see a wave one, that's the first move up. You start to see some positive sentiment, and maybe we'll get a little bit of a pullback from here.
And we're still on the tab, fear and greed tab.
Still on the fear and greed, yeah. Okay, that's fine. I'll move on to.
Okay.
Yeah. So just trying to explain really that.
Had a chart open.
Okay, I'll move on to a chart then, just to.
Okay. Sorry.
We'll move on to Bitcoin. So actually, from an Elliott wave, I was trying to actually equate the situation on the fear and greed with Elliott wave. So fear and greed, when you're in extreme fear, this is when the market sold off and you got capitulation. That is extreme fear. Capitulation is when you see a lot of red candles like this towards the end, loads of people selling, no buyers left, no buyers at the time. But when everybody's sold, there's nobody else left to sell. So buyers start to creep into the market, but they creep in tentatively. And that's why I say when you see that first move from extreme fear down here, that would equate with extreme fear that we saw the other day when we were at a reading of 30 on the fear and greed. We've moved up since then. We're now at 46. So it's still not moved into positive territory, and there's still a lot of nervousness in the market because it's still, when you have a wave one in Elliott wave, the first wave higher from a low point, there's still a lot of fear, and people are thinking, oh, could it still be that we go to new all-time lows? Well, I say all-time, but new lows below this local low here. So there's no real concerted positivity within the market. There's no agreement really yet. There's still a lot of nervousness, and that's why the market's comes down quite easily in wave two. And wave twos, that movement down, if this were wave one up, then wave two down. Wave two often retraces quite deeply the territory of this wave one. So it might get a reasonable move down on Bitcoin, but then is when you, if we do reverse before reaching new lows, that will be a wave one up, two down, then we get wave three. Wave three to the upside, and I'll just put an arrow there just to show you where a wave three would potentially be. A wave three would be a powerful move like this arrow here. So if we move down even potentially further on this movement down, the wave three will be powerful to the upside. Wave threes are normally what's called the impulsive wave. They're most powerful. They're normally a minimum of 1.618 times wave one. So if I put my Fibonacci measuring tool and just measure what I'm proposing is potentially wave one here, this first move up, that's what I've measured as wave one. Now, if wave two were to come down to, let's just say it comes down here, for example, then the minimum move for wave three would normally be expected to be 1.618. And if that were the bottom of wave two, then that would take us to 66,689 on Bitcoin. But it's also perfectly reasonable and common and acceptable to go to 2.618. And 2.618 would take us above the 70,000 mark. And it's even possible to have much higher extensions, especially in crypto, because crypto, as we know, is quite a volatile asset. And so potentially we can go, again, it's perfectly reasonable to go to 4.236. That's another common Fibonacci extension. And if we did that, then wave three could even take us right up there to 77,000, which would be new all-time highs for Bitcoin. So this is tentative. We don't know for sure. But if we just scroll out a little bit, I think we've got a very interesting chart formation right from back at March last year when this chart eventually updates. It's a little bit slow. There it is. And I'll scroll out a little bit more so you can see. And probably even a little bit more. This is very interesting. Again, it's taken a little bit of time to populate, but basically Bitcoin is held within a parallel channel from last March, and it's not even populated back to there. It's slowly doing it. So basically going back to last March, we stayed within a parallel channel, and we just actually hit the bottom of that parallel channel the other day at 58,600 or whatever it was, that low point we saw on Sunday night or Monday. So we can see the move was from the all-time high, was corrective, was within this channel, this parallel channel. It actually bounced off beautifully from the bottom of the parallel channel and bounced off, beginning to bounce off higher. So that's extremely positive, and I would be interested in DCAing into this asset with stop losses just below this parallel trend channel. So I think it's entirely logical that this would potentially be a small wave one up, wave two down, and we're going to get a powerful wave three to the upside. If this stays within the parallel channel, then the next upside in the parallel channel, the top of the parallel channel, will potentially be somewhere up here, and we can see that's 89,000. So potentially that will be the next, if we do bounce off this channel, which we appear to have done, if we bounce higher and it moves to the top of the parallel channel, then the next boundary within the channel to overhead resistance would be around that 89,000 for Bitcoin. And again, we could break through that, but that would be a barrier that we need to break through to get even more positivity. But that would take us to all-time highs again, new all-time highs. So overall, just to summarize on Bitcoin, we had the all-time high. From the all-time high, it's just corrective sideways within the parallel channel. We hit the bottom of the parallel channel. There's a number of indications say we're moving higher. And in fact, we did have an eBay upgrade again back to AAA for Bitcoin. So it's looking really positive and constructive. And I like to think it's a good time to DCA into this and other assets. So just moving over to a couple of other assets. And I'll just click on Solana. And again, I don't know quite why the computer's moving slowly, but anyway, we will be able to see.
It's overworked, Matt.
It probably is, yeah. Because I'm on it constantly, yeah. But we can see again, actually, Solana is a very, very similar situation to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, we saw a correction from the all-time high. This isn't all-time high for Solana, but it's local high. The previous all-time high was a long, long time back before the FTX crisis, when Solana went to, I think, about 260, somewhere around there, I think it was. So we're below that level, but from the bottom, the FTX crisis, when Solana went down to about $8, we've moved up we got a move up to wave 3 in blue. And then we've had a correction down, and that correction is basically a 3-wave correction. It's 5, 3, 5 correction. We may or may not have finished that correction to the downside, but this arrow, like we had the arrow indicated up here, and we had this arrow partly because we got 3 waves higher, which is corrective, meaning there's more downside to come. And it was confirmed with the candlestick formations, and it was confirmed once again with bearish divergence. So I've not got that shown here because I need to show RSI to show it, but we had bearish divergence. So there are multiple signals telling us that price was going to reverse at this level, which it did exactly that. And then now we're beginning to see signals of a potential reversal back to the upside. As I say, we can't identify the precise point, but we've had enough of a correction. We may go a little bit lower, but around these levels, and that's why DCAing is important, because we don't know the precise level, but around these levels, we should see a good reversal to the upside. And I think it will take us to new highs above that local high and possibly even challenge previous all-time highs around that 260 level. So again, as I mentioned yesterday, the pieces of the jigsaw are beginning to fit together to paint a picture of positivity for the time being. And that positivity will be around potentially the opportunity for US to begin to lower interest rates, because as we mentioned on the very first chart we looked at, there's a lot of unrealized losses, and that's because interest rates are high and they've been staying high for a long time. This means that US Treasury bonds are underwater. So the banks holding those treasuries can't realize those assets because they're in big loss. Now, if they hold them to maturity, they'll be able to, get all their money back and there'll be no loss realized whatsoever. But right now, because they've not reached maturity and because interest rates are high, they're holding loss positions, which is a precarious position to be in if there were to be a bank run. So it's really quite a worrying situation. So if they lower interest rates, or if the Fed are enabled to lower interest rates by perhaps a lowering of inflation, and remember, we've got PCE out this Friday, so only a couple of days' time now, PCE, that is the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. Now, if that comes out lower than the 2.6 expected, I believe we can expect a good rally in the markets, because that will give the Fed fuel to potentially lower interest rates. Now, one of the Fed governors yesterday, I think, came out and said, we're not yet ready to lower interest rates. Now, that for me is a sign they're probably ready to lower interest rates, because they usually say, don't believe what they say, just believe, what they say is so often not the truth. They're just trying to misdirect people. So I think we're getting very close. When they're saying that, it means we're getting very, very close. There are a lot of indications that interest rates will come down soon. Maybe not the next meeting, but I think this next meeting, when it happens in July, I think the next meeting will definitely signal the interest rate reduction to come. And that will be a massive positive for the markets. But in the run up to that, we'll start to see more and more signs that the Fed will be enabled to lower interest rates. So I think PCE may well be that first sign that we see on Friday. We're seeing signs of softening in the US economy. And if we start to see signs of inflation beginning to fall away, which I think we will with PCE, then that should be really positive. And that would validate all of these chart patterns, telling us that the correction is either over or nearly over, and we should start to see some good upside soon. So we've had a number of positive upgrades on cryptocurrencies. So we had Solana had an upgrade. We had Litecoin had an upgrade. So again, these slow charts updating, but Litecoin has had a bit of a sell-off, we can see. But again, it's kind of from the top there, from that local top there, I've got an ABC down. And you can see here, I've got an arrow. We had an arrow again. We had some hidden bearish divergence telling us the price was going to sell off. That's precisely what it did. And at that time, we also had an eBay downgrade. So now we've got an eBay upgrade down here, and I haven't looked at divergences, so I don't know whether there's divergence to tell us, but I do know there's been an eBay upgrade. So what that tells me is I need to do some more due diligence here, because it's telling us there's a potential buy opportunity around these levels, that maybe this correction is complete. So this ABC correction is complete. And I would assume there's probably some Fibonacci relationship between this wave and this first wave down. I mean, I could just check it very quickly to see if there is. So I'll just measure that first wave there. That's a very rough measure, but that's about it. And just look, okay, it's nice actually. So you can see we're, okay, 50%. I don't like 50%, but it is actually one, it's not a proper Fibonacci number. But what we've done, we've retraced down here is 50% of this move down here. Now, although 50% is not a Fibonacci number, it's one that is often used, and that's why it's here in this Fibonacci measuring tool. We've got 50% there, the 0.5, and we've got other measurements further down. We've got 3.618, which also is not a Fibonacci number. So there are some whole numbers in there, like even 100% isn't actually a Fib number really. But there are some retracements that are very common, like the 50% is a very common retracement. So we've got to watch for it. We just slightly exceeded the 50%. So maybe we've got a little bit lower to go, possibly. But again, the signs are that we've had an ABC correction down. Correction means that the impulsive direction is to the upside here. And that's why this arrow is showing us for some good potential upside to come. Whether it's from this level or whether it's a touch lower, when you look at the magnitude of the rise compared to the risk of the fall, the downside is minimal and the upside is maximal. So that's great risk reward for as far as I'm concerned. Just looking at the time again, I guess Bruce will be throwing me out again. But
no, we can continue a little bit, and we do have a viewer as well that wants to look at SHIB as well. Just want
to SHIB.
Yes, he says he's got 122 million SHIB.
Okay, we'll jump into that one. Have a quick look. I'm not actually looked at that chart much recently, but let's just wait for this slow chart to populate. I mean, overall, actually, I'll need to scroll out just perhaps a little bit more there, just to see what the overall picture is. It's looking corrective to the downside. So I'm actually just so far looking at this. Yeah, this is looking reasonably positive. So we've got this massive impulsive move to the upside, and we've got a corrective move to the downside with potentially a W, an X, and maybe a Y, or even maybe just a simple ABC to the downside. But it's looking potentially positive because, as I say, this is very clearly an impulsive move to the upside, and this is very clearly an overlapping move, very much overlapping. You can see all the overlapping candles here to the downside. So that would tell me that we still have basically an impulsive direction to the upside. So although we've been correcting down, and we've corrected down massively for a long time here, it's still a positive outlook, especially bearing in mind how far it has fallen. I'm just trying to get my fib measuring tool to wake up, and it's okay. It's waking up a little bit. So we'll just measure that first wave down on SHIB. That's near enough. And then we'll just transpose that to top of that wave. Okay, again, not bad. Maybe, I mean, we're close to that 50% yet again, reasonably close to that 50%. There may be a touch lower to go for us to meet that 50% there. It could, of course, drop lower, but that's actually, if that were a wave one, if we're looking really impulsively, whether it's wave one or wave B, sorry, wave one or wave A to the up, and then down is wave two or wave B, we're probably close with this correction to the downside, probably close to a completion of that correction. So then we should expect some good impulsive movement to the upside. And again, getting this slow chart to move from somewhere around these sort of levels, I think we can expect some powerful movement to the upside. So in general, I'm actually quite positive about SHIB, as I am actually with a lot of the crypto assets across the board. So we've had a nasty sell-off. People always, this is a time of fear when a lot of people are very fearful. But as I've said over and over again, when people are fearful, that is the time to start thinking, okay, there's been a sell-off. That's why people are fearful. And people normally do the opposite. When when the market's selling off, they get nervous and don't want to jump in. But what people should actually be doing is when there's been a big sell-off, they should start to think, okay, maybe there's some buying opportunities here, because you want to buy stuff at discount, and discount only happens when the market's had a sell-off. Discount doesn't happen when you've had a rally. That's when prices are at their peaks. So I think this is a reasonably positive outlook. And if I were to put RSI on there, I'll just see if that will add. Again, it's acting extremely slowly. Maybe it won't add in time. Let's just see if it does. Relative strength index, yeah, okay. Yeah, it's not behaving very well at the moment, the chart. But basically, if I was to put RSI on here, I'm quite sure we'll be able to find some sort of, okay, it's appeared now, a little bit slow. So, yeah, let's just see, there is some divergence here. Yeah, I can see divergence already. This is quite interesting, so really worth looking at. So I'll put my, from here to here, we can see lower lows on the price, and then we look for corresponding, and we look for corresponding here, look for exactly the same on RSI, and we can basically see, so we see here the downward sloping on the price, so lower lows on price, and we see higher lows on RSI. So what that is telling us is basically, this is bullish divergence. This is actually regular bullish divergence. So it's amazing. So I'm glad this viewer actually asked us to look at SHIB, because we've done no previous work on it. This is really confirming everything, that this is a corrective move down, that we're seeing some beautiful bullish divergence, regular bullish divergence, telling us that there's likely a price reversal around these levels. And it's normally one of the most accurate leading indicators that there is. I actually love to use divergences using RSI as the oscillator. And so this is telling us that we're somewhere near the bottom on SHIB, and we should actually push now impulsively to the upside, especially based on this. And also RSI is right in the middle at the moment on the 50-ish area. That's telling us there's loads of upside potential still to come. Before it reaches an extreme into overbought territory, there's a long, long way to go on RSI. So that's telling me overall the signals are looking really, really good across the board, but also in particular for SHIB here. Not one that I would tend to invest in, but actually from a technical perspective, it's looking really good.
Nice.
So that's probably a nice place to finish, I guess.
Yeah. Well, another great report. The markets do look pretty nice. I have the fingers crossed on the geopolitical situations. I think everybody, just needs to remember what's important to them. Remember what brings us together, and we can come out of it. So, pretty interesting. And the markets right now look pretty nice for a good run.
Yeah, and even potentially we're looking at some downside to come, I think, in the near future.
Strong today for the US dollar.
Yeah, strong today. It is strong, and that's probably causing a little bit of negativity across the board in general on the risk assets. Not massive negativity, but I think we're close to reversal. And I actually think that we're treading water, as you've always said. You like that phrase, treading water ahead of the big news. Well, the big news is the PCE figures Friday. And I think the markets are going to be, in the absence of any major market moving news, they're going to be treading water ahead of this Friday PCE figure coming out. And if that figure comes out, as I'm hoping and expecting, below 2.6%, then that will cause the US dollar to drop, and it will cause this to turn green. All the risk assets, the crypto, should turn green to the upside. So let's hope that's what we see. It's about time we saw a bit of a drop in inflation, because the US have been under this heavy weight of high interest rates for such a long, long time now, and the Fed have been, refusing to reduce the rates. Maybe they're right, maybe not. But I think the economy now and people in general want to see lower rates, and to have this burden removed, this millstone around their neck. They need the load lightening so they can actually get on with their lives.
It's true.
Yes,
it's true.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good. Thank you, Bruce. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope that encouraged your SHIB listener. And
he's I'm going to hold my bag.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's just
impulsively.
Yeah. Hopefully a bit of encouragement not to have weak hands, just to stay strong and patient. And I actually had it's funny, one of my ex-followers, he had some, I can't remember what he called himself, but it was a very negative handle he gave himself. But actually the advice he had was extremely powerful. He just said, patience is the key to good trading. And I couldn't really agree more that you must have patience. When you see the markets go down, don't just panic, actually analyze the situation. If the situation is genuinely negative and you can't see any good reason, then fine. But like SHIB, we just looked here, there's actually a lot of positive signs in the negative price action that we've seen. And so there's real good hopes and potential ahead there.
Amazing.
Yeah, good. Thank you again. Catch you tomorrow. All the best, everybody. Bye for now.
You got it, brother. Cheers. So a couple of things I want to cover before we finish the show here. Of course, we have Bannon, who is supposed to go to jail over the last in the next few weeks. Okay, and then I want to talk about as well Assange again. I want to talk a little bit more about Assange, but so the U.S. House Legal Advisory Committee has found that the January 6th committee is illegitimate, and as well found that the subpoenas issued by the January 6th committee are illegitimate. And so now they have filed an amicus brief to stop stop Bannon from going to jail. So that's that's pretty interesting. I mean, who knows? It's kind of like mean, they should have done something a long time ago, right? I mean, we're like literally, I think he's supposed to report to jail on the 2nd or something like that, or the 6th. I don't know if he gets January 4th or July 4th. Probably not. Probably I'm coming in. But anyway, early July, I think he's supposed to report to jail. And now the last hour, days before, we're in the last business days before it's happening. The House decides they're going to, act like they're doing something. I don't know. I mean, if Bannon goes to jail, I mean, I was talking to some people last night, and the thing about Assange getting out, everything is done for a reason. Nothing is ever done, by accident. These people, the normal American people are reactive, but the people that are setting the standard, they're not reactive, right? They're doing things so that people react. And so the Assange, him getting out, everybody, or not everybody, but people are like, oh yeah, this is great. The world's turning. The U.S. is not the biggest, the biggest bully. Assange is out. This, that, and the other. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm thinking to myself, I didn't say it to the person, the group, but I'm thinking Bannon's going to jail. Trump's probably going to jail. We still have the magic electronic voting machines. We do, I mean, come on, guys. I don't know. There's a lot of optimism. Trump is very optimistic. That's one of the reasons why he's so successful. He's an optimistic man. And that is one of the things that propelled the economy. You had some guys come out over the last few days, and they say, oh, if Trump gets in, inflation's going to go through the roof, and this and that and the other. And, markets are emotional. And number one, I don't think so. You and I both know what causes inflation primarily, and that is money printing. And so he did print a lot of money, I will say that. But I think a lot of it had to do with COVID. And I think, it's like the 51 intelligence agents. I think they're full of it. But in the same breath, we'll see if something comes out of that. So Steve Bannon is supposed to report to jail. They as well. I was watching Trump's legal team, which personally to me is lackluster. But they were talking. I saw a report, and they were talking as well about how they're probably going to sentence him to jail. And I'll tell you this, guys. I'll tell you this. I've helped a few people in my life over the years with hiring some different lawyers and this and that. And I'll tell you what, we always hired the toughest, most vicious lawyers that you could ever find, the guys that you were scared of. And Trump's legal team is not that. I don't know who makes those decisions, but that is not Trump's legal team. They are not that. So waving to crowds of supporters at the airport fencing. He just went into, this is Julian Assange. He has a press conference that is coming up here in a few minutes. We are going to carry the press conference live. Here he is. He's back in Australia. Let me just pull up my screen here. He's back in Australia. The great Julian Assange figured his way out. Got to hand it to the guy. He's got more lives than a cat. He really did it. Here he goes. Just arrived. There he is at the airport, walking actually into the terminal, and I see the time between the locals. So in about 10 minutes, we are going to carry the press conference live here on Julian Assange, one of the great patriots of our time, has been released by Hooker Trust. I don't know how Julian Assange is free. He is he was convicted, let out. They gave him time served. And he was guilty for the crime of journalism. Basically. Guilty for the crime of journalism. Unbelievable, really. Craziness. It is absolutely unbelievable. Guilty for the crime of journalism. I mean, basically that's what it is. So he is down. Of course, we have. Let me go over WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks. Trump used to tell us, "I love WikiLeaks. I love WikiLeaks." So he would tell us, "I love WikiLeaks." Media alert. Yes, this is what I was saying here. Boom. So, media alert. We have a press conference, WikiLeaks press conference due start in 15 minutes at the East Hotel, Canberra Avenue. Really unbelievable moment, guys. Unbelievable. So, Julian Assange told the world that what the U.S. was doing and the U.K. was doing, and we were not following. You know, war has rules. I know, man. Nice, right? Yeah, man. Freaking, he's free now. I hope he can stay alive for a while. I have my feelings that the hack of the Federal Reserve and his deal came at the same time, so I don't know if that had something to do with it or not. I do have some back channels with them. I'm going to try to get them on the show. You know how that is, though. Everybody wants them on the show. But it would be great. Never underestimate the power of people. I'm on their X feed right now, so I'm just going to share that. Never underestimate the power of people to come together and make history. My gratitude is towards you. You can move mountains. WikiLeaks editor-in-chief. And that is Kristen Hrafson. I mean, these guys have really been under it. His wife, Stella Assange, she has just been by his side. She has been just wonderful, wonderful wife. His biggest and best supporter, by his side from afar. Poor guy's been in jail. And what he did was he told us what was going on. He told us about the military-industrial complex.
Waving to the crowd. It's such a joyous moment. Sorry, Jeremy, I need to interrupt you. We now have live feeds basically of Julian stepping out of the plane in Canberra.
Oh, please, let's see it.
Oh, it's such a. Well done. He's walking on the tarmac. I don't know. He's waving to the crowd. It's such a joyous moment. I'm not sure you can see it, but believe me, this is such an emotion.
But without guys like Julian Assange, without guys like Edward Snowden, we wouldn't know how bad our government is. We wouldn't be at the same point. And these men risked it all.
Well, if
Edward Snowden is sitting over in Russia. He can't leave.
Backtracked
Julian
a few
Assange
years,
was
I can tell you
basically in prison for 14 years.
He's looking a lot better than
9 of it was in an embassy, but he
prison.
was basically in prison in the embassy.
It's such a great moment.
Nicer.
He's clencing his fists and waving to the crowd.
5 years
what
in
a
jail.
Great moment in history
For telling us the truth
and be a part of it.
For letting the world know the truth.
Thank you. I mean, we should all be.
I'm just getting it on my phone now.
It's unbelievable.
Wow.
He is.
And I tell you this.
Now.
I'll tell you this, for those people out there who say,
Stella,
"Oh no,
this is
Edward Snowden,
my
and
God,
Julian, they aren't patriots."
And John Shipton is there, his father,
they're
reuniting with the family.
They're bad people,
what a great moment
they're traitors.
This is something we've been fighting for, waiting for.
I ask you this: who are they traitors to? They're not traitors to me. They told me what's going on with our rascals, with our crooks. That's not a traitor. When these guys take an oath, they take an oath to the Constitution. They don't take an oath to the scoundrels that are in office, to the scoundrels in the administrative deep state. These are heroes. They're heroes. Julian Assange, of course, Australian man. I'll go back. back to my WikiLeaks feed here. But Edward Snowden, of course, is Edward Snowden, of course, is an American. One of the great men of our time, WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange. This is really something else here. So they're gonna start their press conference in about 5 minutes. We are going to go live with that. I just got kicked out. You can only do an hour on Instagram, so I don't know. Maybe I can just start that again, huh? How do I do that? Let's see here. Yeah, I can do that again. Ha! Insta. I'm modeling agent on Instagram. It's an old it's an old one. Let's see here. Julian Assange press conference. Boom. So we are going to bring that to you live here. We're going to keep covering this. This is the biggest. I mean, this is huge. You know, Trump really. Oh, they won't let me change it. How about that? Okay. All right. Fair enough. Remove this destination. Remove. All right. Now we got it here. And then I'm going to add it again. Here we go. Boom. We are live. We're live. I'll tell you what, I love doing the show, guys. I love doing the show. I love being on here. I love having the microphone. I love being able to bring you guys this stuff. And hats off to my main man there, Fly Mackey. My main man, Fly Mackey, the man with the plan for making it all happen. Because without Fly Mackey and without the Smart Money Culture TV network, we would not be here. Let's reload this page. Let me run the Smart Money. I got a banner here. Smart Money Culture TV. If you want to be involved, we are growing a lot. We're growing a lot. And if you want to be involved, you should be involved. Smart Money Culture TV network, smartmoneyculture.tv or the smc.tv. I'm running that on the bottom here as we queue up the great Julian Assange. I'm really almost beside myself here. These are the quotes. Let me load this up here. Some quotes from some of the judges here. It was interesting. These quotes from the U.S. judge at Assange's plea and sentencing hearing in Sapin. It appears this case ends with me. I hope there will be some peace restored. Quietly profound. I did read more of that as it was happening. Let's see here. Assange emotional as judge declares this case ends with me here in Spain. I'm sure he is emotional. He must be feeling a lot of things. Julian Assange appears to be a little emotional. He nods as Judge Manglana says, it appears this case ends with me here in Spain. Judge says Assange will walk from Sapin Court a free man. With this pronouncement, it appears you will be able to walk out of this courtroom a free man. I hope there will be some peace restored. Yeah, I'm getting a little emotional too. Judge Manglana says, noting the island of Sapin was this week celebrating 80 years of its own freedom. Now there is some peace. You need to restore it with yourself. And when you walk out, pursue your life as a free man. You know, when I was a kid, I was always like, oh, you know, I wish I lived in the revolutionary times. You know, young boy, right? And that would have been so cool. You know, this and that and the other. And then here I am. And we are in revolutionary times, guys. We are in revolutionary times. All Julian Assange did was show the world the horrible things that the US government, that the UK government were doing. And the reason that they're able to do this, it always tracks back to the central banking cartel. Because the central banking cartel is the one who fronts the money. And actually, while we're waiting for Julian to get on here, we'll talk a little bit about that, because I actually had a couple of different posts about that yesterday, so I'm still waiting for them. The central bank is actually literally taxing us into extinction. They're actually taxing us into extinction. It is a fact. I'm going to share this here. We are waiting for Julian to come on. I have a close eye on that. While we're doing this. There we go. So, one of my friends here, who thinks the Federal Reserve is a criminal organization and needs to be abolished. So the Federal Reserve, just so you know, if you watch the show, you know, is a privately held central bank. They like to play that it's not privately held and all these things, but it is. It's owned by 10 different families. And they have a board of governors, okay, that they, you know, that's their front people, that they liaison with Congress and this and that and the other. And I said, I know they are. This is what they promised Woodrow Wilson and the rest of the traders who passed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. It gave the central bank unlimited, unchecked authority to tax the American people by printing money and diluting the US dollar value. And I'm going to play what he says, because this is exactly what they told Woodrow Wilson and the rest of the traders. And this is why they did it.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. So there is zero probability of default. The United States can pay.
So we're going to take that out of the box here for a minute while we're waiting for Julian. Okay, because what he just said is that is what they told Woodrow Wilson and the guys back in the day. Let us be the central bank. Let us handle the monetary policy. We will always give you enough money. You will never default on anything, because we'll always give you the money, because we are giving you the unlimited and unfettered ability to tax the American people without them even knowing. All we do is dilute the money supply. We'll print whatever money you want. Just give us the power of the currency. And Woodrow Wilson sold us out. The big bridge right around here with his name on it. Sold us out. He did say later in some of his later writings that he was upset that he did it. He made a big mistake. And I hope he was upset, but it really doesn't do any good to anybody now, because he sold us out. And the central bank, once they had that power, they have been ruling the United States since then. They've been ruling us. So my friend responded, she says, they are destroying the economy. And I said, they are killing us literally and economically. Literally and economically. The central bank and the so-called Federal Reserve, because there's nothing federal about it, is taxing us into extinction. And I recorded a short video. Yes, but they're not just destroying the economy. They're destroying the people. By taxing the American people into oblivion, they've actually been the main catalyst for the population decline. People don't think they have enough money because they have to give so much of it to the government and to the central bank. They don't think they have enough money to have a family. And so they're actually killing us. literally, as well as economically. Yes, but they're not just destroying the. So it's pretty important statement because it is so true. The central bank, the Federal Reserve, the U.S. central bank, and the central banking cartel, because they don't just own the central bank here in the U.S., they own most of the central banks in the world, across the West and everything else. They are literally taxing us into extinction. Why don't you have 6 kids? Well, there's probably a number of reasons, right? But one of the reasons, maybe because you don't think you have the money to have 6 kids, or your wife doesn't think you have the money to have 6 kids. But as well, the central bank and the cartel behind it, the policies that they fund and they push also degrade the society, breaking up the family, putting the wife to work. I have no problem with any woman having a job. It's great. It's fine. But if the survival of human beings, if our survival is hinged on women having over 2 children or more, then the most important thing that we can do is have a family. That's like the most important thing. Then we can worry about money and this and that and the other. And if the central bank is enabling 60, 70, 80% tax, because you're getting taxed about 50% on what you make on the front end through the government, which is also in bed with the central bank, because the central bank's funding all the money, making about 3% of all the paper bills they give out. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Central bank's in charge. But then they're also diluting the money supply a lot. And when they're diluting the money supply, they're taxing you as well. That's a tax. Inflation is a tax. People are starting to figure out inflation is a tax. And Assange, I just want to make sure I've got my finger on the trigger here. I know they're going to start this. That is, after 5 years in jail, Julian Assange has finally walked free. Julian Assange wasn't in prison for his own crimes, but for exposing the crimes of others. And this is why, as well, when we look at what's going on this week, we have Donald, or we have presidential immunity in focus, right? Presidential immunity is going to be maybe they'll give an opinion on that or give a ruling on that at the Supreme Court. But if Trump doesn't have presidential immunity, then George W. should be prosecuted for his crimes, and Obama should be prosecuted for his crimes. There's one thing that I think we've all learned kind of this year, and that is that, legal, I talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, legal, illegal, it's a gray area here. It is a gray area. All right, we are going to go ahead and go live here on this press conference, bringing it to you live here.
Espionage, US crimes, human rights abuse.
Feed doesn't seem to be the best at the moment. This is the feed that we have. This is the official feed. Let's give it a minute. Not surprising that they would try to.
His freedom, Julian pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage for publishing evidence of US war crimes, human rights abuse, and US wrongdoing around the world. This is journalism. This is the criminalization of journalism. And while the plea deal does not set a judicial precedent, it's not a court decision, the prosecution itself sets a precedent that will be used against the rest of the media. It's important that journalists all around the world understand the dangerous precedent that this prosecution has set. An award-winning Australian journalist who's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for his publications has spent more than 5 years in a high-security prison because of this extradition request from the United States. We are absolutely thrilled that Julian is now home in Australia. I can say when we landed here in Australia, I became very emotional the moment we landed. And the Prime Minister was the first person to get on the phone to speak to Julian. Julian thanked him and the team and told the Prime Minister that he had saved his life. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. Come on. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Prime Minister Albanese, for his principled leadership, the statesmanship and diplomacy that he showed in leading the effort to bring Julian home to Australia. It was as opposition leader that he said enough is enough, that there was nothing to be served by Julian's ongoing incarceration. As Prime Minister, he kept his word. He raised it at the highest level at every single opportunity. He has continued to ask the US to bring this to an end, and his efforts completely changed the situation for Julian and enabled our negotiations with the US government that allowed us to reach this outcome. I also want to thank our ambassador to the US, Kevin Rudd, our former Prime Minister, whose relentless efforts in Washington, working together closely with us, with myself and my co-counsel Barry Pollock, completely changed our relationship with the US and completely changed the negotiations. Without his efforts and his adept diplomacy, we would not be in the position we are today, and Julian would not be home. I also want to thank Stephen Smith, our High Commissioner in London, who worked tirelessly, and the team at DFAT, the consular staff who really facilitated our trip home and were incredibly kind to Julian along the way. This is a huge win for Australia and for Australian democracy. This is a huge win for free speech. This is a huge win for Australia that our Prime Minister stood up to our ally, the United States, and demanded the return of an Australian citizen. And that Julian came home today is the product of 14 long years of legal battles, political advocacy, and ongoing campaigning, not just by us, but by so many people in this community. A global movement was created around Julian and the need to protect free speech, and it's that global movement that has led to his release today. I really want to thank everyone who has joined us in this fight, who have supported us along the way, because without that support and the campaigning that's been done, we just wouldn't be in this position. Julian is incredibly grateful for the support that he's had from the Australian government and from the public here in Australia, and we're delighted that he's home. He's finally home. I'm going to invite I'm happy, we might take questions, I might just take questions at the end if that's okay, but I'd like to invite my US co-counsel Barry Pollock to come and address you about the plea deal.
Good evening. Earlier this evening, earlier today in a courthouse in Saipan, we had a hearing that brought to a close a prosecution that never should have been brought. Julian Assange has, for so many years, sacrificed for freedom of speech and freedom of the press. He's sacrificed his own freedom. And finally, today, that tragic situation ended, and we are all grateful that Julian is back home in Australia where he belongs, back with Stella, back with his children, reunited with his father. It is unprecedented in the United States to use the Espionage Act to criminally prosecute a journalist or a publisher. It's in more than 100-year history of that law. It has never been used in this fashion. It is certainly our hope that it will never again be used in this fashion. Julian spent years in Belmarsh. No one should spend a day in prison for giving the public newsworthy and important information. In this case, information that the United States government had committed war crimes, that there were civilian casualties exponentially greater than the United States government had admitted in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was definitely in the public's interest to have this information, and Julian provided it to the public. He performed a tremendous public service, not a crime. The problem with the Espionage Act is there is no First Amendment defense in the Espionage Act. It does, by its terms, not matter the reason why you publish. The U.S. for years, the U.S. government has claimed that these publications did great harm. Today, the United States government admitted that there is not a single person anywhere that they can produce that was actually harmed by these publications. Hopefully this is the end, not just of the case against Julian Assange, but the end of the case against journalism. Thank you.
I wish to thank the Prime Minister, Albanese, the officials who have been working in DFAT on securing Julian's release. I'd also like to thank the Australian people who have made this possible, because without their support, there would not be the political space to be able to achieve Julian's freedom. And that support is across the board. I thank the opposition for also supporting Julian's release. It took all of them. It took millions of people. It took people working behind the scenes, people protesting on the streets for days and weeks and months and years. And we achieved it. Julian wanted me to sincerely thank everyone. He wanted to be here. But you have to understand what he's been through. He needs time. He needs to recuperate. And this is a process. I ask you, please, to give us space, to give us privacy, to find our place, so that our family be a family before he can speak again at a time of his choosing. I think it's important to recognize that Julian's release and the breakthrough in the negotiations came at a time when there had been a breakthrough in the legal case in the UK in the extradition, where the High Court had allowed permission to appeal. There was a court date set for the 9th and 10th of July, an upcoming court date in which Julian would be able to raise the First Amendment argument at the High Court. And it is in this context that things finally started to move. I think it revealed how uncomfortable the United States government is in fact of having these arguments aired, because this case, the fact is that this case is an attack on journalism, it's an attack on the public's right to know, and it should never have been brought. Julian should never have spent a single day in prison.
But today we celebrate because today Julian is free.
We'll take 10 minutes of questions, just address them to the individual, and I'll tell you when we're out last.
I think the first question is Robinson. The return of Julian Assange has revived this huge debate about whether his activities were right or wrong. And we've seen political figures in the US and in Australia here say that he's no hero, that his disclosures put lives at risk. Some Democrats don't like the disclosures about Hillary Clinton, for instance. What's your response to this sort of fundamental argument that's been made against Julian Assange, that he put lives at risk, for instance, and that his disclosures were not in the public interest?
Well, to start with, there's no evidence of any actual harm, and that's exactly what the US government acknowledged in court today in Saipan. So there is no evidence that anyone was physically harmed as a result of those publications. The public interest in those publications is clear. Evidence of war crimes. So the US had not disclosed the extent of civilian casualties in Iraq and Afghanistan, the use of torture and other forms of human rights abuse around the world. There is no denying the public interest in WikiLeaks publications, which is reflected in the reasons why WikiLeaks has won the Walkley Award for Most Outstanding Contribution to Journalism, the Sydney Peace Prize, the fact that Julian's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize every year since those publications. So to suggest that this was not in the public interest, I don't understand the basis upon which they could possibly suggest that. And so I think this is clear.
Stella, can we have a question? That moment on the tarmac where you embraced Julian, it must have been incredibly surreal. Was that the moment you realised that this was over?
Yes, I was overcome by emotion when I first heard that there were crowds cheering that I didn't even know were there behind a fence because it was dark. And then I heard them cheer more and more and flashes. And then I turned the corner and then I saw that Julian was coming. And we embraced. And I mean, I think you've seen the pictures. I don't want to express in words what is obvious from the image.
Stella, what comes next for Julian Assange will just revitalize WikiLeaks, will pursue a career in politics, or happy? What's next?
Julian needs time to recover, to get used to freedom. Someone told me yesterday who had been through something similar that freedom comes slowly, and I want Julian to have that space to rediscover freedom slowly and quickly.
Jen, as one of my colleagues mentioned the Podesta files earlier, I think he may not have read them. Could you, now you have the opportunity, just remind us of how that actually performed the DNC and the corruption within? The Podesta files were pretty good for the Democratic National Congress, yes?
Look, there's clearly public interest in the DNC materials that was released by WikiLeaks, and in terms of the legality of those publications, there's a US court decision showing that it had the highest possible protection of the First Amendment. So from a principal point of view, people might not like the politics of any particular publication, but that publication is absolutely protected by the First Amendment, as US courts have found.
Jen, are there any post-release conditions for Julian, parole periods? The US have said that he's banned from returning to stepping foot in the US, gag orders, anything like that. And can you and Barry give us a sense of the negotiations with the DOJ, particularly given Julian's strong-held view that he was not guilty of the crime?
I think it's best Barry speaks to the terms of the plea deal.
There are absolutely no restrictions on Julian. The case against him is over. There is no gag order. There are no other restrictions. He is going to be able to go back to whatever life he chooses to build with Stella and his family. The negotiations were a protracted process that several months, sort of in fits and starts. We were not close to any sort of a resolution until a few weeks ago, when the Department of Justice re-engaged, and there have been very intense negotiations over the last few weeks. One thing we were very clear about was that any resolution would have to end this matter, and that Julian would be free, that he was not going to do additional time in prison, he was not going to do time under supervision, he was not going to do time under a gag order. So that was one absolute requirement. Another significant point of negotiation was where the plea would be taken. Julian did not want to come to the United States in any form. Ultimately, obviously, we negotiated Saipan under conditions where he would be released in the UK. He would come to Saipan not as a prisoner of the United States or the United Kingdom, and that we would come in and leave on the same day, which is exactly what happened. And other provisions of the plea that were very significant. The United States agreed that they are not going to bring any other charges against Julian for any conduct, any publications, any news gathering, anything at all that occurred prior to the time of the plea. So even if he had prevailed in the extradition proceeding, that would have just resolved this case. This resolves any possible case that the United States could bring against Julian for any subject matter. So that was obviously very significant to us.
Thank you. Jen and also Stella, you called yesterday your hopes for a pardon to be granted to Julian. How do you see that playing out? Would you like the Australian government to support that call? What can be possibly done to actually achieve that outcome in your view?
Look, I think today we celebrate Julian's freedom. Today is the day that the plea deal was approved by the judge. I think it's also a day where I hope journalists and editors and publishers everywhere realize the danger of this U.S. case against Julian that criminalizes, that has secured a conviction for news gathering and publishing information that was in the public interest, that was true, that the public deserved to know. And that precedent now can and will be used in the future against the rest of the press. So it is in the interest of all of the press to seek for this current state of affairs to change through reform of the Espionage Act, through increased press protections, and yes, eventually, when the time comes, not today, a pardon.
So, can I ask, how hopeful and how confident are you that your husband will be pardoned? And what do you think has been at the absolute core of the shifting sands here that's enabled his release?
I think freedom of the press is in a very dangerous place. It's not evident that it will move towards more protections, but rather less. There needs to be a conscious and joint effort to push back, and that pushback should have resulted in the dropping of the case against Julian. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. That would have been the only good outcome for the press in general if the U.S. government had abandoned this case entirely. Now you have the press in a as vulnerable position as Julian has been, and that came the day the indictment came down. Let's be clear about that. That didn't come down with this conviction, and frankly, that mobilization should have happened years ago, and that's what enabled the conviction.
So, is Mr. Assange?
I think he'll be pardoned if the press unite to push back against this precedent, because it affects all of you. It affects your future ability to inform the public and to publish without fear.
Is Mr. Assange going to meet the Prime Minister in the coming days?
No comment.
Can we have 3 more questions?
Here, Stella, here. But what I can say from the phone call with the Prime Minister this afternoon when we landed is that he is delighted that Stella and Julian are both now in Australia, and we certainly hope that at some point they'll be able to meet.
Does Julian plan to keep going with WikiLeaks and publish more documents, more journalism?
Look, he just arrived in Australia after being in a high security prison for over 5 years and a, how long, 72-hour flight or something like that. It's premature. Julian has to recover. That's the priority. And the fact is that Julian will always defend human rights, will always defend victims. He's always done that. And that's just part of who he is. He is deeply principled. And he remains deeply principled. And unafraid.
Stella, here in Spanish, please.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Well, pretty unbelievable moments. I can only imagine. I thought to myself, wow, I mean, this guy, he's going to get on TV and do a press conference right now. I've flown around the world quite a few times, if you guys know me, which most of you do. And you know, I have crossed the globe a number of times, and that is not an easy thing to do. And I'm sure he's very emotional. Can't imagine. It's been over 5 years in a prison, over 14 years basically in a prison. He was hiding out, not able to leave an embassy for about 10 years, and he has been released. Stella Assange showing remarkable poise as well. His lawyers appear to have done a great job. They did a great job getting him out of there, and that is something else. It is a historic moment. There is no denying that the U.S. and the UK, the U.S., I'm an American, it was wrong and is wrong, and it continues to do a lot of things that are not right. And it's up to us. It's up to us in order to change it. My father always said that we were all in the exact right place at the exact right moment in time. And you're in this place for a reason, in this time. And we have to build a future for our kids. We have to save our country. We have to be able to leave something for our future generations. And it is guys like Julian Assange, who really took a bullet. It's amazing he's still alive. And the truth is, he might not be alive for that much longer. There's a lot of people that want him dead. I see people in my groups and, oh, he's a horrible guy and he this and that, da. Hogwash. Go back to your CIA outfit. Spin, like. Anyway, he's free. God bless him. God bless his family. God bless you. I'm signing off. We had a great show today, and we will be at it again in a few hours on your TV there in Texas and Louisiana, and as well as streaming around the world. Cheers.
Your voice is powerful. When combined with social engagement, it's a force for change. Decentralized media paired with free speech is the catalyst for an empowered world and a unified, invaluable ecosystem. Join Global Boost, become a champion of free speech, and help to reshape the future of media.